let's say SSH into my router here, right? Because the name of the router is Vios. So I'll do Vios, SSH into Vios at, right? The IP that I set is 192.168.0.1. Enter. I shouldn't be able to SSH into anything because currently there's no route for the host to connect to, right? I have not configured or set up SSH. If I ping the IP address for the second router, 168.0.1, which is this IP that's essentially here, I should be able to ping this router, right? So 192.168.1.1. So Ethernet interface 1. So it's saying the host is unreachable. Let's find out why. So Ethernet interface 0, Internet interface 0. So what we have to figure out is which interface this essentially is coming out of. So let's do again show INC. So ethos 0, ethos 0. So let's see what ethos 0 is for this one. To just hover over it. So this is the Ethernet 0. So what I actually have to do is I have to set up ethos 1. So this is the ethos 0 for this port. This should be ethos 1. Yep, that's ethos 1. This right here is ethos 1. Okay, so I did not set up ethos 1. Ethos 0 is what I set up. So let's fix that. All right. Essentially, what I did is I configured this interface here, which doesn't know what this interface is. So I just have to come in here and configure the second interface, which shouldn't be that much of a difference. I'm just going to switch this to 1. I'm just going to make it the next IP address up. Okay, so I have to obviously go into configuration mode, and then press enter, commit. Now when I ping, it should get results. It's still saying host is unreachable. Okay, to show INC. Let's exit this. To show INC. Show INC. Let's save. Let's try to exit. Okay, let's. Sometimes the servers do that. They don't want to. The routers do that. They don't want to work with us properly, and that's perfectly fine. Again, it happens. Exit, exit, and okay, so the Boston route is acting up, so we're just going to reset them. Again, these things happen. So we're just going to reset both of our routers, so to speak. And we're going to eliminate the switch because we don't really have a need for that switch, right? So let's actually eliminate this switch. And let's connect directly. Okay, so I'm going to use port ethos 1 here, and I'm going to connect it to ethos 0. Okay, so I just got to remember that this is port ethos 1 and this is port ethos 0. So when I configure it, I know exactly what's happening. I don't really need a layer 2 switch because it essentially is not really doing much. So I'm going to log in Vios. I'm going to do a show INC, and I notice that nothing's been configured, which is perfectly fine. Vios, and then I'm going to do a show INC here as well, and I'm going to notice that nothing has been configured. Okay, so if I recall correctly, if I hover over, right, I should get the exact port that each of these are. So if I hover over here, I know that this is port ethos 0, and then I know that this is port ethos 1. Right, so I'm going to bring my router. So I'm going to go to configuration mode. Okay, and I'm going to set the IP address here. So I'm going to do set INC. interfaces, Ethernet, Etho 0. And I'm going to set the address at 192.168.0.1/24. Okay, and I'm going to commit this. I'm going to save this. Okay, and I'm just going to hover over it to verify again that this is port Etho 0. So that looks good. So I know that port Etho 0 for this section has been set. Okay, and if you have a hard time remembering, you can just annotate this actually and just add a little note here that will help you remember. Could do Etho 0, right? You could do 192.168.0.1/24. And that's what I do sometimes in case I have a hard time remembering exactly what I did. And then we can just duplicate this for this one, right? Instead, this one's going to be as a text edit. This one's going to be 1. And we're going to make this one 5. Apply. Okay. All right. So we know that the Boston router is going to have this IP for port Etho 1. So we're going to configure this, right? Instead of 1, 0, we're going to switch to 1. We're going to get a one IP of 192.168.0.5. Okay, well, we want to make sure we go into configuration mode first. Okay, so we are all set. So we're going to save this. And then we're going to commit. Okay, so when I do show INT, let's exit, show INT. Okay, I noticed that the Etho 1 port has been set. So let me go in here to make sure. And I noticed that the Etho 0 port has been set. So let me see if I can ping from one to the other, 192.168.0.1. Okay, perfect. So I now have connection with Providence. And if I try to ping from Providence to Boston, I am able to ping from Providence to Boston. So I know I can ping both ways. So I know that my network works. All right. And all is somewhat well in what I need to accomplish. So now let's say I'm in Boston and I need to access the router that is in Providence. Okay. So if I was to do SSH, okay, Vios at 192.168.0.5 to access the Providence router from Boston, okay, it's telling me that the connection was refused. I am not able to actually physically connect to that particular machine, so to speak. Okay, it's not going to allow me to SSH into it. And the reason that we're running into this issue is because we have not configured and set up for our routers to allow SSH to happen amongst one another. Okay. One of the rules when setting up SSH in any router is you want to make sure you configure it, and you want to assign specific criterias to that router, so that way only certain people really can SSH to it based on access and key transmission. So let's set up SSH in Providence, so that way we can SSH into the Providence router. So whichever router or whichever system you want to log into, you want to make sure you have an SSH server running on either machine where authentication is allowed. Okay. So how do we set up SSH in our Fios router? To set up SSH, we're going to go to set services. We're going to type in set, and we're going to write services. Okay. First, you have to go into configuration mode. We're going to do set service, and then we're going to do SSH, and we're going to specify the port for SSH, which is port 22. Okay. We're going to set another service, and we're going to set up Telnet, right? We're going to give Telnet a port of 23. Then we're going to compare the two to see what we essentially have. So right now, we have SSH set up with port 22. We have Telnet set up with port 23. All right. So now that the SSH port has been configured, okay, one of the other things you could do is set up specific IP address so that way, a specific IP address so that way when users try to log in, they can't just generically log into your machine. You also want to make sure you set up usernames and give different access to this machine. So, for example, in our case, one of the things that I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new user that will be SSHing to the Providence router. So, what I'm going to do here is I am going to set system, okay, login user as CSF 432, right? So set system login user CSF 432, all right? And I'm going to give it an authentication, right? And I'm going to make this authentication in plain text. And I'm going to essentially call it my password, and I'm going to keep it the same as BIOS, okay? Then I'm going to commit, and then I can compare. Well, it's not going to let me compare because there's really nothing for me to compare, okay? So now I am going to exit, okay? So if I say show run config, show run, just do show configuration. Okay. I will notice I now have services set up. I have my interfaces set up. So I have the SSH service that's up. Okay. I have a user that can log in, right? I didn't specify what level that user is in, but by default, since I didn't, the user has admin level permissions. But I'm going to show you how I will be able to now SSH from one router to the next. Okay. So once I have all of this set up and configured, I will now be able to SSH from one machine to the other. Because remember earlier, when I tried to SSH to this router, I was not able to do so. Okay, so let me clear the screen. Okay, I was not able to SSH into this router. Okay, so now let's go back and try this and see if we are able to SSH into the Providence router as the CSF 432 user. So I'm going to write SSH CSF 432, and we're going to use the same IP address at 192.168.0.5. Okay. And it's telling me that the connection was refused. Okay. So let's take a look and see why that is. So let's do this. Let's do show INC. So INC. Okay. And it's refused because you notice that what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to connect to this router as an SSH, but this router does not have SSH configured. SSH is configured on the .1 network. So we're gonna again try this, okay? And instead of 5, we're gonna write 1. Okay? And you want to make sure you specify the port. So we're gonna do port 22. All right, and it's gonna ask me, do I want to connect? I'm gonna write yes. It's gonna say, are you sure you want to continue? Yes. Then it's going to ask me what is the password for my CSF 432 account. I'm going to write BIOS. And well, I'm technically in. I wrote BIOS twice. So I'm now logged into um, this router, and I can actually make configurations in this router. Let me show you how I know I'm logged into this router. So if I do show INT, okay, you will notice that I'm still getting this IP when I'm supposed to actually get this one. Let's take a look at what went wrong here. Okay, so let's do it again. Let's try this again. Password files. Okay, so now let's do show. Perfect. You notice, so for some reason I didn't write the password correctly. You notice that I am now actually logged into this particular router, right? So if I was to write show configuration, you will notice that I have the services that are configured for this router. I can see the usernames that's been configured for this router. I can actually make changes in this secure shell for this particular router, right? So if I was to, let's say, um, change or set up interface one because it hasn't been it hasn't been configured, I can actually do that, right? So let's say I want to configure, okay? Etho one. I can actually go in here and change this to Etho one and put it on a completely different network with a /27 subnet. Okay. Then I can commit this. I can save it. Right. I can exit. Right. And when I go here, if I was to write show int, you will notice that the new interfaces that I set up for the Providence router has taken effect. So that is how you can set up SSH between two different devices to remotely access one device uh, from a different location. Again, remember that SSH is a peer to peer connection that encrypts the information that is being transferred from one machine to the next machine. Thank you for watching.